Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mentari Pujantoro. I am a project manager at Agora Energiewende and mostly looking at our international cooperations, especially in Southeast Asia. Welcome to our today's webinar, From Furnace to Future, Enabling a Low Carbon Steel Manufacturing in Southeast Asia. And I would like to also run you through what we will discuss today. So in the next 90 minutes, we will have some input presentation from my colleague in Agora industry, Emir and Kajol, to launch our upcoming publication on decarbonizing steel in Southeast Asia, and then followed by a short Q&A. So feel free to drop some questions in the meantime whenever you are listening to the presentations. And then after the presentation, we will have some time for panel discussions. And I'm also very happy that we have joined by four very good panels. And after that, also Q&A session with entire panel and also presenters. So before we start with the presentation, I would like to welcome our director for Agora Industry, Julia Metz, to give us some opening remarks. Handing over the microphone to you, Julia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mentari. Hello, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. It's great to have you all here for our webinar on the steel sector, which plays a crucial role for us as Agora. First, the steel sector is one of the largest industrial contributors to global emissions. So steel production relies on highly polluting coal and therefore accounts for roughly 7 to 8% of total global CO2 emissions. So this, of course, makes it an urgent area for decarbonization. Secondly, so in addition, transforming steel as a globally traded and a fundamental basic material in numerous industries and products demands both taking a cross-regional and also a cross-sectoral view, which we as Agora aim to integrate into our approach in developing climate neutral strategies and solutions for the sector. In addition, what makes it a particularly challenging, but also somehow a compelling sector is that it's quite an expanding sector in some geographies. And this, of course, brings me to Southeast Asia, so the focus region of today's webinar and one of the key geographies in this regard. Here, the sector is a major source of carbon emissions. And in fact, the emissions in Southeast Asia steel sector are projected to double to more than 300 million tons of CO2 by 2030. So only in 5 years, a doubling of the relevant emissions if current practices continue. And in our view, this is not only an environmental concern, but also an economic one, because global markets are moving towards climate neutrality. And if Southeast Asia and the steel sector in Southeast Asia doesn't change its practices, it could risk falling behind the curve. However, we see a great opportunity for the region right now, because more than 90% of the region's blast furnaces will need to be replaced or upgraded by 2040. So this is really a critical window of opportunity for Southeast Asia to pivot towards low emission steel production and then set the stage for a more sustainable and resilient future. And for us, it's clear that in order to seize this opportunity, Southeast Asia needs a phased transition and also a unified regional strategy by pooling resources and building stronger supply chains. And in addition, Mentari already mentioned in her introduction China, Japan. So in addition to this regional strategy, we also think that it's important for Southeast Asia to engage with major global partners, such as China, Japan, and South Korea, through the platforms such as ASEAN+3. This is actually one of the key messages coming out from the report, which Mentari mentioned that we are launching today, which is on steel decarbonization in Southeast Asia, on pathways, opportunities, and enablers. And in this report, we dive into the latest developments of steel decarbonization technologies. We explore policy frameworks required to drive this change and also identify enabling conditions in the region. And for us as Agora, developing this report was a great opportunity to combine our technical knowledge on the steel sector within the team, but also with the regional expertise and tapping into existing stakeholder networks from our colleagues who have been working on Southeast Asia in the energy sector for several years. And I would particularly like to thank Kajol and Emir Cholak, who you will meet in a minute, as well as Mentari Pujantoro, which you already met, who really drove forward this study and also managed to bring together a wonderful panel of experts coming from industry, from NGOs, think tank partners, and the governance sphere. And with this, I would like to encourage all of you in the audience to actively engage with our panelists and experts. Please ask questions, challenge us, and share our thoughts. And with this, yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion with you. And I'm handing over again to Mentari, I guess.
Yes, thank you so much, Julia, for the wonderful and insightful opening remark. And I'm really, really encouraging participants today to, as Julia mentioned, please write in the chat box, in the Q&A box, your comments, what you think, and also your questions, since we are also very much interested to hear what you think about what my colleague will be presenting today. So with this, we will start the presentation on the key findings of Agora new report on decarbonizing steel in Southeast Asia, pathways, opportunities, and enablers. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague, Emir Cholak, and also Kajol, that will be presenting the findings in the next 15-20 minutes. Over to you, Emir.
Thank you very much, Mentari, for the warm introduction. Let me share my screen. I hope everyone can see it very well. Yes, good afternoon for our audience in the Southeast Asia region and good morning for our audience in the European Union time zone. Today, we will be walking you through the outputs of our study with a goal to assess the opportunities for steel decarbonization, particularly in Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam. So let me start with the presentation. Our presentation consists of three parts today. Firstly, I will be guiding you through the Southeast Asia steel production and growth. And my colleague Kajol will be walking you through over the challenges in the steel sector and the pathways and the enabling conditions. So I would like to start the presentation with explaining you the energy landscape and the economic growth happening in the Southeast Asia region in the last years. So Southeast Asia is a fast-growing economy, and this growth has driven significant advancements in the industrial production, infrastructure, and transportation networks, and with steel sector being this key beneficiary. And over this period, steel demand in Southeast Asia has grown substantially, driven by this rising infrastructure demands, urbanization, and expanding manufacturing sector. So while steel sector playing a vital role in the economic development, it has also been a key driver for fossil fuel consumption and carbon emissions, as energy system in the region is highly dependent on natural gas and oil. The graph on the left-hand side shows the sectoral distribution of greenhouse gas emissions in the Southeast Asia region. And in 2022, more than 35% of greenhouse gas emissions came from electricity generation and almost 20% came from industrial production. And as it's expected that the region's demand for energy-intensive manufacturing industry will rise in the upcoming years, there will be a need to balance economic growth and sustainability. So this brings us to the figure on the right-hand side, which is the distribution of energy demand by country and resource. We can see that Indonesia and Vietnam are the largest coal producers in the region. Just to give you an example, as of 2022, Indonesia accounted for almost 90% of the region's coal production and is a major global coal exporter. Vietnam is the next largest producer and consumer of coal, and the industry in Thailand and the Philippines are consisting higher share of renewables. Malaysia is fueled by higher shares of natural gas due to its national resources. But despite the abundant renewable energy potential in the region, the pace of renewable energy deployment has been slow, leaving significant expansion opportunities for the region. So the fast-growing economy and energy demand is also very well reflected in the steel demand metric growth in Southeast Asia. The total steel demand in Southeast Asia has reached from 45 million tons to 76 million tons in the last 15 years, and the projections expect that this number to grow over 100 million tons. As you can observe on the graph on the right-hand side, the construction sector is driving the growth of the steel consumption both in Southeast Asia and globally. The automotive sector in Southeast Asia accounts for a smaller share of steel demand than the global average, and this is vice versa for the electrical and electronics sector. So the steel sector consumption dynamics in Southeast Asia is heavily characterized by the emphasis on the construction sector and its growing electrical and electronics sector. Building up on the demands, let's also take a look to the supply side. So historically, the crude steel capacity in Southeast Asia has been dominated by the electric arc furnace technology due to its lower capital expenditures, operational flexibility, which enables rapid deployment due to the decentralized nature. However, we can observe a noticeable shift in the Southeast Asia market to blast furnace technologies. From 2011 to 2020, the share of blast furnace capacity increased from 6 to 30%. And as of 2023, 45% of steel capacity in Southeast Asia was based on BOF technologies. If we take a look by a country-specific level, Vietnam and Indonesia has the highest number of the blast furnaces, while Thailand and Philippines almost fully rely on electric arc furnace. And this increase of blast furnace investments in the region will drive up fossil fuel consumption as well as its emissions. We estimate that the emissions from steel production could go over 300 million tons if all announced BF-BOF projects will materialize in the next years. Just to put this number into the context, this is close to the countrywide CO2 emissions from UK or France. And if we look into the new capacity additions in more detail on the right-hand side, we can see that the Southeast Asian countries has seen a rising share of foreign direct investment into the steel sector. According to the OECD data, around 80% of foreign direct investment made into the steel production capacity was from the Chinese companies. And while such investments entail opportunities for job creation, of course, the predominance of these investments being in the BF-BOF technologies raises the questions on the higher greenhouse gas emissions and their economic viability on the long term. So besides the investments going into the BF-BOF technologies, the region has still a significant capacity of electric arc furnace steelmaking, and this is also expected to grow. And scrap availability is vital for the EAF technologies. So despite the availability of the domestic supply, the growing demand may increase the share of imports for the upcoming years. This may require some investments into the domestic recycling systems and introducing targeted policies for scrap, offering a low-emission pathway for steel production. If we look into the steel trade, nearly all Southeast Asia countries are net steel importers, except Malaysia. And Vietnam and Indonesia had the highest steel demand, and their imports exceeds exports, despite being the largest exporters of the steel in the region. Philippines, on the other hand, imports almost 75% of its steel consumption. Malaysia has a well-distributed export market, while Thailand relies heavily on US and neighboring countries. So the new tariff on US steel imports is likely to impact Malaysia and Thailand's steel sectors. Exports to the EU have been increased for Vietnam, signaling Vietnam's growing competitiveness in high-value steel exports, despite the downward trend in the global steel trajectory. It is expected that EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, the CBAM, will affect the steel policies for the trade partners of the EU, either causing new trade routes, such as maybe India, or shifting towards more cleaner resources. To stay competitive, it will require for the region some regional strategies for trade diversification, emission reduction, and capacity management. In the next slides, my colleague Kajol will be diving deeper into that. So with this, I will be handing over the mic to my colleague Kajol. Kajol, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emir. Thank you, Emir, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to see such a diverse group of participants that have joined today's webinar. And as Emir said, I will walk you through our analysis on the key challenges that the steel sector in Southeast Asia is facing, and some possible enabling conditions to achieve decarbonization pathways. We have identified three overarching categories of challenges: structural challenges, technological challenges, policy and regulatory challenges. So let's begin with the structural challenges. Sorry, my slides just skipped. So the first issue is the age of the steel production fleet. And as you see in the earlier slides as well, much of the region's steel industry has developed post-2014, compared to more mature markets like Japan and South Korea. As you can see in the graph on the left side, the Southeast Asia operates a much younger fleet, which is one of the biggest challenge in the region to scrap out the young fleet. Southeast Asian steel makers are now approaching a critical window, especially between the 2030 and 2040, which will change and face the decisions around the reinvestment. So these choices will have a long-term implication for both the production capacity and emission pathways in the region. At the same time, the region's steel industry is highly diverse, covering both upstream and downstream activities. But with the rapid expansion, and as we see in the graph on the right side, there is an ongoing challenges on the overcapacity with the combined investment, which is creating a new layer of structural challenges. You will see that the surge in the capacity has led to the growing concerns around overcapacity, driving into the structural imbalance and the real risk of low utilization rate. With this is not just an economical challenge, but it is also affecting the long-term sustainability and competitiveness. And then we look into another challenge. The second and another critical challenge for the region is the access to low carbon technologies and the high production of cost of green steel. So the Southeast Asia sector operate in a fiercely competitive and price-sensitive market. This makes the adoption of the emerging green technologies particularly difficult, especially without the clear financial incentives of policy support. In our analysis, in the table that you see in the left side, the technology readiness level, the TRL of the key breakthrough technologies, which are available before 2030 and after 2030, we have looked at like what are the key challenges in access to these technologies. And what becomes clear is that the transitioning to the green steel is not just a matter of ambition, it requires a realistic alignment with the regional coordinations. The key factor that are influencing this transition includes the access to affordable renewable energy, availability and the cost of scrap, the hydrogen infrastructure development, supporting logistics and policy framework, and look into the from the cost point of view based on like the current trends and the pace of the activities in the region. We found that the production cost with the low carbon technology, particularly being it either the natural gas or hydrogen in different combination, remains significantly high. So if you see in the graph on the right side, when we did the analysis of the blast furnaces against the different technologies, without the carbon pricing, without any sort of carbon price mechanisms, the green steel is likely to be cost competitive in the near term. Even till like 2050. And this highlights the need for the carbon market or a similar market interventions to level the playing field and accelerate the shift towards low emission, which is also sort of encourages the industries to be more competitive and where the demand can also be created for the green steel market to be developed. And that brings me to the third and another challenge, which is on the policies and the regulatory support. What we see is the lack of a cohesive policy and regulatory support, which means a crucial and the binding constraint of green steel developing in the region. As a part of our analysis, we mapped existing policies across the entire steel value chain, looking at from the upstream, midstream, and downstream. The goal was to identify where the enabling framework already exists and where the critical gap remains. While do we observe that there has been some momentum in the industry policy dialogues, the overall coordination remains fragmented. There are overlapping mandates across the ministries, but a clear targeted incentives for decarbonization is somewhat missing. So let's take a closer look at the case of Vietnam. On the upstream side, there has been a notable progress, including the drafting of green steel strategy, increasingly supporting the environmental or for hydrogen development, and the early initiatives in the renewable energy deployment. However, on the downstream side, the key enablers such as the green public procurement policies, green building requirements, and the robust scrap recycling framework with the growing need that we see from the previous graph by Emir as well, that both from the EF point of view, if we have to make the shift, we need to have a much more robust framework around to align some of these developments which is happening in the region is still either missing or underdeveloped. And these are the essentials to drive the demand for low carbon steel and close the circularity loop. So this mismatch between the policy ambition and the implementation across the value chain certainly creates the uncertainty amongst the investors and also slow down the momentum for industrial transformation. Now, to overcome some of these structural technology and policy challenges, we have outlined the pathway and the enabling conditions, what could be the forward-looking ways, and identify the possible enabling conditions with that. And as I mentioned in my previous slide as well, we see that there is going to be a very critical window of opportunity for Southeast Asia in the next decade, especially with the relining of the blast furnaces, which will be coming in between 2030 and 2040. The decision made now will determine the region's ability to align with the global decarbonization trends and maintain the industrial competitiveness. To stay on track, government and industries must make their ambitious and decisive commitments, particularly around the phase out of the blast furnaces. A crucial step is to halt any new investment in the blast furnace in the region. New projects based on this high emission route would deepen the region's lock-in and risk creating the standard assessment and the assets as a global market titan the carbon regulation. Instead, we need to start redirecting the capital towards the greenfield projects that support the transition. So, in the short to the medium term, in means of scaling up the gas-based DRI as a bridging technology while preparing the ground for full adoption of a hydrogen-based DRI and renewable powered electric arc furnaces, which we see could be a possible pathway to look at. And in the long term, we believe that this full transition, not just technologically feasible, but also economically competitive with the gradual shift to H2-based DRI, also along with the policies which I mentioned earlier, especially the carbon price mechanism, would be essential. And the policy and these technological ambitions needs to go in parallel to each other to complement the overall pathway. So if we follow this pathway, the region could avoid up to 120 million tons of CO2 emissions. That's a massive contribution to climate action. And that's also positioned the Southeast Asia as a leader in the low carbon industrial development. You will also notice that in our analysis, we have deliberately excluded CCS as we believe in case of Southeast Asia, there is a risk of locking the region into high emission pathway, which is precisely what we must avoid. So as a second policy mix that can transform and could be the enabling is to look at a more comprehensive mix of policies and instruments across the entire value chain. And each stage from upstream to downstream requires a targeted support to create an enabling condition for low carbon transition. So let's break it down. In case of the upstream, powering the transition, we need a robust policies and infrastructure for renewable energy deployment. This includes setting ambitious national targets, and as we also heard previously from Emir, the overall renewable energy in the grids is pretty relatively lower compared to the average number when we look at the global. So the enabling the grid access, providing financial instruments like the corporate PPAs, net metering, feed-in tariff would play a very crucial role. And without these reliable and affordable renewable energy, green steel technology will be very competitive and would not create a clear signal or a green signal for the producers as well. Next, in the midstream, the focus shift to the production process, and here the two levers are essential. First is the carbon pricing, and I keep repeating this. As we discussed earlier, this will help level the playing field and send a clear market signal. Second, we need innovative financing tools such as a transition fund, concessional loans, or blended financial models to support the industries in adopting low emission technologies. Finally, in the downstream, the demand side policies would be the key. This includes defining and harmonizing the standards for low carbon and green steel, expanding the green building standards to include embodied carbon, which is often overlooked, and critically developing and implementing green public procurement policies that set minimum requirement or preferences for low carbon material in public infrastructure and construction projects, which is the largest steel consuming sectors as we have seen earlier. So by addressing the full value chain, we can create both push and pull, and also demand pull force that reinforces each other. And to enable some of these conditions, we would also need specific trainings, multilateral collaborations and international collaborations involving each stakeholder, skilling and reskilling at each level. So the overall policy has to be not just looking at more like vertically, but both vertically and horizontally, how we can create more momentum around it. That brings me to the next slide on the additional policy support, the national efforts that can happen and strategically align with the emerging global development, particularly around the green iron trade. A forward-looking approach can position Southeast Asia as a global hub for low-carbon industrial supply chain, enhancing competitiveness, attracting green investment, and enabling a just and an inclusive transition. Yes, we understand that the green iron trade is not something immediately that is possible, but in the long term, that could be the strategy that the region has the opportunity to redefine its role in the global steel trade, which the kind of the shift that we are seeing in the electric arc furnace technology. So instead of investing in a large integrated steel plants, possibly we could also look at key importer for green iron and major producer for green steel. So capitalizing on its strategical location, the regional coordinations and the geopolitical relations and the industrial growth, this can open a new industrial opportunities. For example, the joint ventures between the steel and the automotive sectors to tap into the fast growing market like the electric vehicle could be one of them. And in terms of the trade framework, there is a significant opportunity to build on existing platform, such as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the RCEP, and the ASEAN existing level partnerships and the existing groups that we have. So establishing an ASEAN level steel decarbonisation working group, deepen our relationship with the ASEAN, China, Japan, and South Korea cooperation, and using a regional platform to explore anti-carbon leakage mechanism would help and strengthen the coordination beyond the national effort and look into the more of the regional alignments on technology, finance, and policy. By acting together through regional coordination and strategic alignment with low carbon trade trends, Southeast Asia can go beyond risk mitigation and emerge as a powerhouse in the global green economy. With this, I would like to summarize my slides. So as a key takeaways, I would say that Southeast Asia is emerging as a key player in the global steel value chain, both driven by the domestic as well as the export demand. And with the 90% of the blast furnaces that would need the reinvestment, there is a chance of redirecting the investment and avoiding a huge amount of emissions. The Southeast Asia sector can transit to low carbon production through gradual investment in clean technologies. And this pathway could avoid about 120 million tons of CO2 emissions with the gradual projections that we have with the shift towards the low carbon technologies. And this would not only make the region more competitive, but more reliant, more climate reliance as well. So joint effort between the government and industries are the key to build some of these competitive low carbon steel sector in Southeast Asia. A value chain, the policy across the whole value chain would be more essential, and we need to tap into different aspects, both from the upstream, midstream, and downstream. A unified approach to look at not just at the national level, but more at the regional coordination to strategically align with the global low carbon trade trends would help in deepening our engagements with China, Japan, and Korea to redirect some of these investments towards greenfield. With this, I stop my presentation, and if you want to learn more about the study that we have done, I invite you to the publication, which is now online. And you can also download using the QR code, which is available on your screen. And with this, thank you so much. And we open the floor for question and answer. But just one closing remark from my side is Southeast Asia has a rare opportunity to shape a climate alignment, competitive steel industry from ground up. The transition is challenging, yes, but also entirely possible. What's needed now is a bold, coordinated action starting today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Kajol, for and also my colleague Emir for a very good summary and also presentations on our just launched 1 second ago our report on decarbonizing the steel sector in Southeast Asia. And with this, I would also encourage our participants. We have a good number, I think around 60 participants today, and around 70 if we include also some of the panelists and our Agora colleagues. So really great turn up, and I'm really expecting a good discussion after this because we are moving to a panel session. But if you have any questions, please don't forget to write it in the Q&A, and we will try to answer it as also we discuss with our panel today. And moving with the panel discussion, so I'm very, very happy today that I am joined by 4 experts in the steel sector coming from different backgrounds in the Southeast Asia and also global region. So first of all, I would introduce our first panel, Dan Reski Valeris, or we can call him Dan, which currently he serves as technical officer in the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Department at ASEAN Center for Energy. And at ACE, he has led various initiatives, including the development of energy performance benchmarking guidelines for different industry sector. Happy to have you, Dan. And second, we have joined by Ibu Farida Lesida from Global Buildings Performance Network, and she brings over 25 years of comprehensive experience in green building, investment climate advocacy to the front for of sustainable development. So happy to have you also, Bu Farida. And then we are joined by Emma Kemp, engagement manager for Climate Group Steel Zero. And she also has over decades of experience in climate and sustainability. And at the moment, she's working with demand side companies in the automotive sector and driving global market shift towards the net zero steel. And lastly, we have also joined by Pak Hari Warganegara, the director of Indonesia Iron and Steel Association, and he also has decades of experience working not only on steel, but also financial sectors and other state-owned companies and industries in Indonesia and globally. So thank you so much for all of you for joining us. In the next 40 minutes, we will discuss first of all, I think I would like to ask each of you the reflection of what you have heard our colleague has presented. What do you think about the roadmap, the suggestion on policy mix that has been presented? And yeah, also the role, for example, of how cross-country collaboration and also partnerships in making a transition in Southeast Asia a success. So I will divide the panel session into 2 main topic of discussion, one about the roadmap and the policy mix, and the second on partnerships. So with that, I will first go to Dan. I will ask, since you're working at ACE, and I understood you're also working on steel decarbonization in Indonesia and also Vietnam. I think I would be interested to hear what is your reflection on the suggested pathway on scrap-based EAF and also hydrogen-based DRI. And what do you think would be, I mean, if we focus on the next 3 years, what are the most critical policies that Southeast Asian countries should focus on?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Daria, for the opportunity. Am I clear?
Yes, I
Right.
can hear you well.
A very good afternoon and good morning for you all. And first of all, thank you for Kajol and Amir for a comprehensive presentations explaining about what you're doing at steel decarbonization in Southeast Asia. And I just like to emphasize that it is pretty much aligned with what we are having here at ASEAN Center for Energy. Maybe to give a bit context for those who don't know about ASEAN Center for Energy, we are international organizations established to support regional corporations in energy, and of course to achieve greater growth of secure and sustainable energy. And one of our missions is also to promote energy efficiency in industrial sector, and steel, along with cement industry being the top two intensive industry in these regions, indicate that we need to pay special attention to support these decarbonizations. And in relation to that, we are also working to chart multiple pathways for decarbonizations towards the net zero in Indonesia and Vietnam. We are working with our global efficiency intelligence consultant based from US, and to understand what the technology might look like in the next 20, 40 years. And yeah, I think it has been covered pretty well by Emir and Joel. We find this is really closely related to with what we found so far. And maybe I just like to point out some of the key observations here from your presentations and also from what we are doing at ASEAN Center for Energy. Maybe the first aspect that I'd like to touch before talking about the green steel, we are also facing the market challenges. Yeah, we are some of the demand in our region is still met by import, especially from China, and we are also faced with a risk of overcapacity due to the import, and also this import can lead to low to the competitions with the local producers that may hit them quite hard. And so, and also the trade war between the countries may look like that it make this a bit more intricate and complex. So I believe the first thing that we need to do before talking about green steel, we also have to protect the market in ASEAN. I mean that this is a good opportunity for us to strengthen the regional cooperations, the direction that we need to do, and maybe we can start by mapping who produce what and what is the demand in each countries and how we can be so self-sufficient within these regions before looking to eye for an opportunity to expand our market. And talking about these market protections, we also have some frameworks actually that we can use in ASEAN. It is called as a mutual recognition agreement, where we recognize the certifications, tests, and standard. I think we can push this agenda towards the framework where we can, let's say, let's define the green steel, what it entails, what are the criteria. I think it's one of the priority that we need to pursue in the next 3 years. And apart from that, I believe the energy efficiency also will be critical, especially for the near-term solutions. So we can push for the quick wins by implementing energy efficiency for the existing fleet. And for the long term, another factors that we have to pay attention to is the scrap steel market. If the directions that we are going is to scrap-based EAF, which we agree that is one of the way to reduce the emissions in these regions, then we have to be prepared to create a more robust scrap market in these regions. And yeah, I think that's some of the key reflections, yeah, from what we are doing at the ASEAN Center for Energy and what you present. I think the more people aware about this, the better it is. Yeah, we have to keep making noises to the government so we can move forward together to green steel industry in the future.
Yes, thanks a lot, Dan, for your remark. And I very much noted, very happy that some of what we have presented and also what you studied as well at ACE together with Global Efficiency Initiative is very much aligned. And also, yeah, some focus also on similar technologies, mapping which country has what, where, who can provide what, and also this scrap steel market in the long term are very much, yeah, I take note on that. And now we have discussed and get some input from Pak Dan from ASEAN Center for Energy. Actually, I mean, from the presentation of Kajol and Emir, they have presented a different or a full value chain approach, let's say. There are good policy mix that are needed in making this a success. one on renewable electricity and in the upstream, and then the second is on the midstream, or the production process, let's say, and then the last one is on the downstream, or on the market, or the lead market, and who will buy the product of green steel. So I think when we discuss with some steel makers in the region, they say like, we would like to move, but who will buy our product? So here, I think I would like to also ask this question, since we are joined by Ibu Farida from GBPN, who has worked on or a lot of experience on financing and also construction sector. I would like to ask you, Ibu Farida, on your reflection on what we have presented, and also what do you think on the downstream policies, let's say, as the construction sector is like one of the drivers for the growth of steel in the region. Is there already a green steel public procurement? Because it's like one of the policy that we talk about. And also, how do you think we can create the lead market for green steel through public procurement, or any ideas from your side? Very much welcome. Over
Thank
to you, Ibu.
you. Thank you, Ibu Mentari. And first of all, thank you so much for inviting us to be in this panel. It's very much appreciated. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So I think the presentations by Amir and Kajol's resonates very much to our works on a day-to-day basis from Gillen Buildings performance networks, right? Because we also strive to move the needle to help the buildings and construction sectors to decarbonize. And a big chunk of that is the embodied carbon, right, in the materials. So as you know, the almost half of all the steel demands tied to buildings and construction. So so I think it's very parallel, right? We have a common goals, right? Put simply, we cannot decarbonize our economy, our buildings, constructions without decarbonizing steels, right? So that's really the premise, and we strive for that. And then we know that the constructions in Indonesia is growing. It's right now it's about 13% of the country's GDP, right? We have urbanizations increasing, infrastructure growth, and affordable housing is need, major projects. But we're at the same time, I think as Kajol presented, we're seeing that in terms of the adoption of green steel, it is still very nascent, but it's growing, right? And we wanna, I think the question is not how we transform, but how soon can we transform, right? And it really matters when it comes to construction and buildings, because as we know, once the buildings are constructed, then the building's embodied carbon is irreversible, meaning that whatever materials that we choose today will really define our emissions trajectory for the next 30 to 50 years. So the building sector isn't just a steel consumers, but it's a critical leverage point for decarbonizations, right? And then where we are in terms of how far along the country in adopting green steel, again, as I said, is still very nascent, but it's growing. And then, but hopefully we're seeing that we're moving towards, where we want to be moving, driven primarily by a few key factors, which is there is slowly, but there is a market pressure. I think Amir mentioned about CBAM, right? So export-oriented manufacturers, they face buyers' demand for low carbon materials, right? And then similarly, also the ESG financier, they're increasingly linking funding to sustainability metrics. This year in Indonesia in February, the financial authority, the OJK, they issued the green taxonomy for real estate and construction. So already giving a signals that there will be more push nudges. It's not mandatory, but still more kind of nudges for financial investors and financial institutions to kind of build more green assets, right? And when it comes to buildings, that also includes the use of green steels. But on the other side, the barriers remain. I think, as mentioned by Kajol and Emers, resonates very much because of there is a limited availability of technology. So there is still limited local supply, which drive the price, right? The cost premium, low carbon steel still carries a substantial price hike, so deterring the cost-sensitive developers to adopt, right? And then I think it's also mentions in the report there is policy gaps where the current kind of building regulations, the from Ministry of Public Works or the cities level, they still kind of lack embodied carbon mandates in the regulations, right? And awareness kind of remains low. So that's kind of coupled with the cost premiums and the limited local supply availability, that's really posed the barriers and the challenges, right? But I think I see that the next 4 years will be very pivotal. There will be more stricter ESG requirements, and I think there will be more also pledges from corporate, maybe bigger developers to begin with, and finger crossed also with the kind of framework being set up for Indonesia carbon pricing mechanism. Hopefully that will also create kind of incentive for more kind of sustainable or retrofits, which will drive the demand for green steels, right? So yeah, I think from the buildings and constructions, demand side of things, we see that waiting is not an option, as I mentioned. Once you choose the materials, we'll lock in for 30 to 50 years, right? So early movers will have an opportunity to future-proof their assets and gain a competitive edge, right? So again, question is really not to when it becomes the norm, but it's really how we can push the market to transform. Yeah, so maybe I'll stop there. Thanks so much, Mentari.
Thanks a lot, Bu Farida. That's very, very insightful, and I very resonate with that. What you said on it's not about yeah, like whether we go transform or not, but about how soon. And what you said, if it's already built, its emissions already emitted, especially in the building sector. So it's really important that we move. And I'm very interested in what you said on also carbon pricing, and we'll would like to discuss that a bit later. But before going there, I wanted to also ask Emma from Steel Zero, since I mean we just talked about the construction part of the demand before, and there are other sectors that are buying green steels. One of them is automotive industry, and I think one of the findings is that this sector hasn't been tapped a lot in Southeast Asia in terms of green steel. So, I mean, yeah, I would like to ask you to reflect also on what have been presented, and also maybe give us a bit of insights on this sector and what you think, how they are doing in terms of like the green lead market or the green steel market, and also maybe on the global side, like how is the picture?
Yeah, absolutely. Am I coming through clear? Great. So maybe just a very brief bit of background so the audience understands how Steel Zero kind of works with automotive actors. So Climate Group is an international nonprofit. We have offices all around the world, including in China. And one of our initiatives is Steel Zero, and that is what I work on, where we are working with demand-side actors to deliver a demand signal for low emission and ultimately net zero steel. We work across lots of different sectors, but I'll hone in certainly on the automotive sector in this section. So ultimately what we're aiming to do here and what we have done around the world is create a global lead market for green steel. This is a market that has shaped the founding climate-compatible market principles and driven clear, credible demand signals from major buyers, some of which of those are automotive. And the automotive sector is, as Mentari said, often looked to for leadership in this space and seen as a lead market. And some of our members, so Volvo Cars, SKF Group, which is the world's largest manufacturer of like nuts and bolts, bearings, so key part of the automotive supply chain, and also Polestar. They're all implementing the Steel Zero commitment and demonstrating their leadership. So they have commitments to use 50% lower emission steel as defined by Steel Zero by 2030 and 100% net zero steel by 2050, or in some cases sooner. So as part of that, they're actively engaging their supply chain partners very much across Asia to align on steel procurement decisions, ultimately influencing how steel is being sourced and specified today. And in fact, Volvo Cars' Steel Zero commitment and demand signal was recognised by the largest steelmaker several years ago, which really helped to catalyse the development of low carbon steel methodologies that closely align with our framework. And that's a really nice, clear example of how buyer leadership can shape supply side innovation. So whilst, you know, certainly the automakers in our membership are showing that leadership, and we are seeing that across different automotive companies as well, more broadly around the world, but like primarily in Europe, I would say. We are starting to see automotive companies all different countries starting to engage with this. Steel Zero has done some work in South Korea. We've worked in Japan, China, and we do ongoing work in India too. So we are making efforts to engage with automotive companies in those regions, and we do see them as being really, really critical. And as you identified earlier, the construction sector certainly uses the most steel, but the automotive sector obviously has this big pull where they have big budgets and it's specific companies that are using a lot, whereas in the construction sector it tends to be more dispersed across lots of different types of companies. And so, yeah, the automotive sector is really critical. We want to see more action from them, and we certainly expect to in the next few years.
All right. Thanks a lot, Emma, for your input and also showing that there are a lot of initiatives globally, especially also from the automotive companies leading. Yeah, I just noted here 50% of low emission steel by 2030 and 100% by 2050, which is yeah, very good signal, I think, for some of the steel makers. As I mentioned before, I wanted to also discuss about the price, because I think there was some discussions before, some mentions that the cost is quite different. There are some cost gap and some policies are needed to help moving this barrier of cost. So I would like to also invite Dan, since you've also worked on this topic. Maybe you can give us a bit of what you think of what should be done in terms of carbon pricing, carbon premium, or maybe other instruments that you have think about in your work.
Yeah, thank you, Mentari, for the question. So, yeah, part of our work, we are also trying to analyze what will be the impact of the green premium from different kind of technologies. It is from EAF and also hydrogen PRI. And well, based on our findings, if this green premium is translated to the end users, for example, like most of the steel is used in the construction sector, it will translate to around additional of $300 per 50 meters per square. So this cost is not nothing, but it is also not that big actually. That if we can promote more policy in the end product, that will be helpful. And in addition to that, for the carbon pricing market in ASEAN, we are still developing, we are still growing. I think only several countries that now move into several selected industry, one of which is the steel industry, which is now being promoted in Vietnam. But yeah, I believe carbon price in the future will help us to move towards green steel, But yeah, another policies or instruments that we can consider is how we can also tap this opportunity in the end product of the end users. So that's one of the possible ways that we can try to approach it.
Yes. Okay. Thanks a lot for that. And looking forward to see more instruments being implemented around Southeast Asia. It's good to hear that there are some signal already in Vietnam, also in Indonesia, and hopefully in in the region as well. I think we are we have discussed some from the demand side on construction sector, automotive sector, and also perspective from ASEAN. I would like now to ask one of our panelists coming from the steel makers, actually, Pak Hari. I think we have presented and discussed a bit about the pathway that Southeast Asia should take in terms of technologies. So improving EAF and scrap in the region, and also considering H2DRI pathway. So coming from steel associations, steelmaker associations, I would like to ask you, what do you think about this pathway and your reflection also on what are the policies, or what will you ask policymakers in the region that you're working with to help moving for, to green steel? Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. The question is to me, right, Bu Mentari?
Yes, Pak Hari.
Okay, okay. Ibu Mentari, thank you very much, and everyone, participants, and also the panelists. Yeah. Greeting from Jakarta. My name is Hari Warganegara. I'm Director Executive of Indonesia Iron and Steel Industry Associations. Yeah. So coming back from the situation of our members, yeah, in Indonesia, yeah, and also the in Southeast Asia, yeah. At this moment, Indonesia produce about 18 million crude steels, metric tons, yeah. And then 2/3 or 70% the technology of our members still using the blast furnace, yeah, blast oxygen furnace, and then 1/3 using electric arc furnace. But regarding the electric arc furnace technology with the hydrogen DRI, we don't have it yet. None of our member using that technology yet. I think in ASEAN also it's not there. There are, yes, some countries like Thailand, Vietnam, they have already implemented their DRI, but the hydrogen is not yet. So, but we understand that the commitment of net zero decarbonisation by 2050, implementation of the Paris Agreement, even our government already have a presidential decree regarding that, regarding green industry going there. Under the Ministry of Industry also is there. Yeah. But at this moment, regarding the blast oxygen furnace, it's still allowed. Yeah, maybe in some country it's not allowed anymore, as it need to be used electric arc furnace or using the hydrogen or even the DRI, yeah, at this moment. But considering that, yeah, we hope, we also realize that some our members already changed the policy, yeah, to transform, like shutting down the blast oxygen furnace machine that they have and convert it to electric arc furnace. They do that. But there are some challenges also still, yeah, because the regulation still open, yeah, and then the decision of changing the technology to the electric arc furnace is because of the compulsory. It's not because of compulsory scenario, but because it's option, because trying to fulfill the market. For example, like we understand regarding Europe about the CBAM, the cross-border adjustment mechanisms. Yeah, so some of our member already can fulfill that. Yeah, but if you see that from Indonesia side, our production of export of the steel in Indonesia, around 5 million metric ton per year. And then to Europe, it's around only near 500,000 metric tons. So still under 10% to the Europe. There are many other markets that caters, like China, Africa, and some also the Middle East. Yeah. So the another challenges is transforming to the green energy or to the green steel technology is not cheap at all. According to the analyze, it will increase 20 to 50% of the cost production for that. And then another challenge for us, like Indonesia, 85% of the source of energy still coming from the fossils. Yeah, so this is also the challenge that we challenge the government. And then government already implement the next 10 years, 85% new investment, it has to be renewable energy. Yeah, so many also company that they want to transform using, for example, like solar panels. But still, because the energy sectors is under the government, yeah, only supplier is the government through the state-owned enterprise, yeah. And then, of course, there is still quota for any our member who wants to transform itself using solar panels. For example, using the roof, or they're using the land that they have, yeah. So this is another issue that we have. But the bottom line, government and us and our member, yes, we know that transform to the green steel or to the green industry is something that if given the choice, we will choose that. Yeah, but again, transforming is not cheap, yeah, regarding the technology and then also the source energy. So one thing that we have done in Southeast Asia, because we have a Southeast Asia organization for the iron steel makers. Yeah, we already signed agreement between the Southeast Asia producers. And then because we basically, they call it ASEAN first and ASEAN together. Yeah, because another challenge for implementing the green steel supply to the world is the supply chains. For example, there are product not really green, for example. Okay, the technology is electric furnace in Indonesia, but the energy sources still using fossils. Okay, and then after that, need to supply to another Southeast Asia country. Yeah, and then comparing to the green steel, 100% green, coming from Middle East, for example, or from Europe, yeah, will be transport to Southeast Asia country. Will be the footprint green, because at this moment, the transport still using vessels, and then vessels still using the marine fuel oil, yeah, which is not green. Yeah, so the footprint will be not green, but the product is green. By the end of the day, yeah, by the end of the receiving in receiving country, whether the product is really green. This is another challenge, yeah, and we understand. We've been discussed this regarding the footprint, regarding the logistic, because our logistic between regions still using marine fuel oil. It's not green at all. So this is another challenge that we will see that. But definitely, we, especially Indonesia and Southeast Asia country producers, we are confirming that we love to see that our world is become green. Yeah, that's why we are committed. Yeah, and then we also sit down with our government. Yeah, and how government can fulfill also the green energy to our industries. Yeah, this is the situation. And then for the information also, Ibu Mentari, that this September, yeah, in Southeast Asia, we will have a gathering, not only the producer but also the policymaker. So the policymaker we will invite to sit down, and then one of the topic is about the green steel industry in the futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Hari. Sounds really good that there will be an event, upcoming event already in September. And also thank you for your input coming from steelmakers associations, also confirming what we have seen also, that there are actually members thinking about moving towards greener or low carbon technologies, and also tapping greening the supply chain. And I'm very happy also to see that there are some regional initiatives that you have mentioned, Pahari, on ASEAN first, ASEAN together. So this and yes, with that, I actually wanted to move the discussion towards more about partnerships and also regional cooperation. And maybe would like to also first ask Dan, coming from ASEAN. Maybe we can discuss also, since Pahari has said ASEAN first, ASEAN together. What is your perspective on this and the discussion at the ASEAN level, maybe connecting to, I think in the next year, that there will be an ASEAN energy cooperation or ASEAN cooperation plan, phase number 3, which will be 5 years, and how also this connects to, for example, the steel sector.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Harriet, for the questions. And maybe I would like to echo what I was saying previously, that first, that there are some frameworks that we can use in ASEAN in order to make us as a stronger region, as regions for protecting our market, and also to encourage and to drive green steel demand in these regions. And you present there are 3 different streams here, from the upstream, midstream, and downstream. Maybe I'd like to connect and relate with some works that we are working on each stream. For the upstream, there is need for renewable energy, how we can power the electric arc furnace with the green power. And for this, I think we have the opportunity for regional cooperations in terms of, at the moment, we are developing the ASEAN power grid to interconnect cross-border electricity trade. And at the same time, we are also currently formulating the framework for renewable energy certificate cross-border trade. So I believe this is one of the opportunities we can leverage later to promote and also to verify that the electricity power to supply in the steel industry coming from from a green and verified framework. So that's from the upstream. For the midstream, there are some questions about financing, how we can finance, how we can fund this kind of shifting, which will be costly. And there are some initiative in ASEAN which is not actually related to the steel industry, but maybe replicated or adopted in the future. At the moment, we are collaborating with the Green Climate Fund to provide some kind of credit guarantee mechanisms for those industry who would like to shift to energy efficiency measures in their factories. I think that's one of the pilot projects that maybe in the future we can expand to provide some kind of credit guarantee or credit mechanisms for industry who would like to shift. And in that case, this will, of course, increase the trust from financing institutions, right, to support these transitions, because there's a backup from support from the Green Climate Fund. And we also have to explore another way, maybe from each country, they have another scheme for a guarantee to improve bankability of the projects or the companies that would like to shift as soon as possible. Again, the other frameworks that I mentioned previously that I believe will be a huge opportunity for us. We are developing ASEAN Plan of Actions for Energy Corporations for the next 10 years. So it outlines what kind of activities, what kind of achievement that we like to do for the next 10 years in these regions. And one of the priority that we are currently formulating is to include industrial decarbonizations and also industrial complex or industrial clusters. So I believe those two approach we can try to promote and to raise awareness, capacity buildings to industry players, how to shift from the current practice to a more sustainable practice. I think there's a few initiatives that may be pushed in the futures, apart from the one that I mentioned previously on the mutual recognition agreement. I think that's gonna be one of the framework that we can agree on the definitions of the green steel, and also how is the measurement and verifications, what standard or protocol that we should adopt that aligns with the demand outside there in EU or in US. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot, Dan, for mentioning the framework, and also you mentioned also the financing part, and also the APAEC or the ASEAN plan for the next 10 years. I would like to also discuss about the financing part later, but before that, I want to ask question to Pak Hari, because there was a discussion before about making a steel maker in ASEAN remain competitive. And I believe there is already also some questions in the chat, and one of them is directed to you actually, which is the same with my question of like how the steel maker actually see these trends of, you know, of the green steel demand and green iron trade and so on, and low carbon steel as an opportunity for how do you see this trend, and how would you turn this into a challenge and opportunity, especially connecting to, you know, like a regional and a global market?
Okay, so basically, back to our members that already transformed the technology fully to the green steel productions. They make that decision because of their own willingness. Yeah, and then for them it's not easy because it's very expensive. Yeah, changing the technology, shutting down the old, I mean not the old, the existing black oxygen furnace technology or line. Yeah, and then after that, they're trying to aim for the green financing facility. Yeah, it's not an easy also. Yeah, one of our members tried to get it from IFC. Yeah, take 2.5 years to receiving the offering letter. But when receiving the offering letter also is not easy to exercise. Yeah, so that's the challenge. And then at this moment, the market that already confirming about the green steel production is Europe. Yeah. And then comparing to the Europe market, to our export, still under 10%. So this is a fact, yeah. But if you want to speed up the process, like majority the member to have to change the capacity, or the change to be green on the process, yeah. Even government at this moment also encourage, but it's not compulsory, and then it's still encouraging. So like okay, give certificate, yeah, and after that give award, yeah. This is the government doing, yeah. But if we ask government, do you have special facility for financing for us who wants to change to be green? Yeah, the government doesn't have it yet. Yeah, so let's say if we have it, you know, through Agora, through our other partners in the world, yeah, if we can have the source of financing in changing the technology to the greener technology, we love to have that, and we can bring this facility or this treatment or this services or this option to our members. Because when you ask them, do you want to change your business to the green industry, to the green steel? Yes, they want. Definitely want it. But how, they said, you know, because at this moment, even the market still Europe. Yeah, that allow, you know, you have to have the sea pumps. Yeah, we understand 2050 is a target, and we're moving there. So how to speed up the questions? Yeah, and how to
Yes.
make our member to be consistent. So in my opinion, is the sort of financings to transform to the green industry. Yeah, this is one. And then the second one, the government also want to transform, but the investment that government done so far is using the steam coal. Yeah, say for example, like the steam coal investment is not even break-even point yet. Okay, and after that they have to change. So this is also business decisions. Yeah, if there is available funding for the government to invest in new renewable energy, yeah, they will love also to transform. Even though it's not available yet now, but our PLN, our electrical company in Indonesia, owned by state-owned enterprise, they already have for the next 10 years, 75% the new investment is renewable energy.
Yeah.
Using solar, or using the biomass, yeah, or using the geothermal. Even our government assess the setting up a nuclear facility, yeah, for the electricity. So this is the commitment from our government.
Yeah. Okay, Pak Hari, thank you for the input. I think I hear it as there is a willingness for the green makers to move. There are needs of also more financing, I think, which is one of the main topic, which I also wanted to discuss more. But looking really, we only have 5 minutes more in this discussion, and then I see really a lot of questions from our audience as well, which are a lot of them are very, very good questions. And I think we will follow up directly with some of that. I think typing the answer directly in the chat. And but I think there is one more thing that I would like to discuss, because this has been asked a lot, is about a challenge on green iron trade, I think. And here I also would like to mention to our attendees that we will actually be publishing some of our publication and what our thinking and narrative around green iron trade, and maybe also connecting to the panelists here working on the steel sector. It will be very interesting, probably also for you. We will do it next week, so wait for our email on that. And yes, I think I'm really, again, very sorry that I think have to start wrapping up the discussion, although I find there are really, really a lot of very, very good insights from everyone. I see, for example, that if I just try to summarize the almost 1.5 hour discussion in several words, I think we all agree that Southeast Asia is emerging as key player in the global steel value chain. There are emissions that are quite big. It's almost the same as the UK or France, but this could be avoided, and the steel sector should transition into low carbon production. And there are, I think, what we hear today, there are some willingness of the steel makers to move. Some of them already moving, and asking also for more support on financing or more instruments, both from getting the renewables, for example, or financing this technology because it's not cheap, and also getting the buyers. And on the buyer side, I think there are also initiatives in ASEAN, as mentioned previously, the ASEAN strategy, also from the construction sector, from the automotive sector, also globally, which I think it gives a really, really good signal that across the value chain that it has been moving. Of course, in Southeast Asia, it's still very new, so there are more and more studies, more partnerships more cooperations needs to happen to support these changes. And yeah, I think, for example, we need more engagement in Southeast Asian countries, not just within Southeast Asia, but also with other countries like China, Japan, and South Korea, for example. And with this regional collaboration, there could be like a more strength in terms of supply chain resilience and speeding up the decarbonization. So again, I very much thank you for all of the panelists. So Emma, Bu Farida, Dan, and Pahari, thank you for joining us today. And also for all of the attendees, thank you so much.